any weather in, but really intriguing matchup. This is Oregon State taking on Utah, and this is a Friday game, I believe. Yeah, that's correct. So fun Friday game. I'm definitely going to have a little bit of action on it. Pac-12. I mean, at this point, with the Pac-12 going away, it's like as much action as I can have on these games, I'm going to have because it's going to be sad. I'll have to tell my kid one day about the Pac-12 and how the last season they actually started to turn it around with talent. Two of the teams in this game, I would say, have pretty good talent. Oregon State favored by 3 at home. So the hard thing with this one is we don't know the status of Cam Rising. It's Wednesday morning. Looking at this line, I don't think he's going to play, but again, I don't want to speculate. We saw something weird last year. We've talked about a few times with Cam Rising and how we were expecting him to play, and out of nowhere, he wasn't in warmups. So it's really hard to say with college football. In the injury reports, you don't really have to disclose that information. And I'm showing a total of 44 and a half, depending on what book you're looking at. So, Iveta, do you have any leans in this one? And I'm curious just if you're attacking this and we'll have any bets.
I'm looking at it the same way you are. So the line has been moving in Oregon State's favor. So we're assuming Rising's out. I think it's safe to,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? I spent about an hour on the message boards last night trying to
Ooh.
find any sort of information and both teams, Utah and Oregon State, and it was just completely unsuccessful. Nothing that we don't already know. They have no
Mm-hmm.
idea what's going on. But it kind of makes sense because they have a bye week coming up. So I'm assuming Coach Witt and his Chamber of Secrets will rest him for another week.
Mm-hmm.
So it makes sense from that standpoint. I just wish they would just come out and say he's not
Yeah,
going
I
to play
know.
for the bye
It would
week.
make it easy on everyone, right? We wouldn't have to speculate anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, it's just turned into a circus, like, I understand coaches and having some level of secrecy, but I don't know, I just think the Cam Rising thing is just ridiculous, but I think, you know, Utah, similar to Florida State, has somehow managed to remain undefeated, even without Rising, but they're on the road, and despite them having that great defense, which I think their defense is better than that 2019 defense that they had. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
their defense is definitely deserves all the praise and the accolades that they've been getting, but they have a tough time scoring. So I am personally leaning Oregon State. I think that's a good spot for them coming off a close loss against their Pac-2 rival, and I think it's going to be a closer game, but I think Oregon State. I think there's some value on them squeaking it out.
Yeah.
Uh, so that's I'm not in love with the play, but that's where I'm at.
Yeah, so two things with this one. One, I will say that even though the line kind of tells us that Rising is probably out, I will say it was 3.5, and it has been bought back down to 3. Now, this can get tricky because there could be just a little bit of uncertainty. Like, let's say Rising has like a 20% chance of playing. Maybe that's why it kind of got bought back to 3. I don't want to say that someone in the market has wind of him playing or not, and I don't think that would be the case because it would go under 3. But I've seen these situations where it's almost like it's not just a all or nothing proposition. It's kind of like we just don't know at this time. So that could be why it was 3. Well, because Bookmaker has it at 3, Circa has it at 3.5. So again, until there's something concrete that comes out, it's probably going to be around 3.5. But if it is announced he's out, I wouldn't be surprised if it moved to 4. I really wouldn't. Oregon State has been a covering machine at home. I believe that they're 11-0 in their last. It's actually 13-0 in their last 13 games at home since 2021 against the spread. So they're covering very well against the spread. Actually, this was before last game. Did they cover last game
I think it wasn't the line
at
3?
home?
Wasn't it 3 and wasn't the final score 38-35?
Well, that
Oh,
was,
no, at home. Sorry.
yeah. So
Let's see.
the San Diego State game, maybe they didn't cover that one. So, I guess that was their first one to kill the streak since 2021, but still, I mean, that's a pretty impressive streak, even going 13-1 over 14 games at home, and I think it's a tough place to play, and also I think just Oregon State over that time span has kind of been undervalued. Um, Now I think maybe the market has caught up to them a little bit, like, they understand that they have, some talent, but I also lean under Iveta because both of these offenses have just been kinda slow at times, and Utah right now, they don't really have an identity on offense. I feel like they're just trying to win games with their defense. So, the under for me is definitely gonna be, a lean 44.5, and also Oregon State at -3. I think I'm gonna fire that up, actually. I was waiting for it to be 3 at a few spots, and it's 3 on Caesars, so I think that's gonna be a play for me too as well.
Yeah, I agree on the under. I would lean that direction as well. And then the other thing about the line too, you mentioned, we are seeing some hint of line movement there. Last week when we were looking at that, when we got the news, the Cam news last week, what the line went from, was it 3 to 6.5 or something like that? I mean, it just, it was just an obvious move. So, um, I
Yeah,
don't
you gotta be kind of, like, married to the odd screen at this point because as soon as you see that one way or
yeah,
another start to move, like, that's gonna tell us everything before honestly, before the news comes out on, like, Twitter or anything. Like, we'll see it move, which is crazy, but that's I mean, I know these guys who know the people who can get this information, and it's crazy. It's not they're not giving it out for free or publicly immediately, but yeah, I wonder how they get it sometimes. I mean, it's leaking. It's leaking out from whether it's like someone in the training staff or like, a presser before like the official news comes out, gets
yeah.
out to someone else. It's crazy.
100%, yeah, and it's, yeah, exactly, it's either coming straight from the team, and usually, when they're getting it that far in advance, it's usually coming from somebody on staff because even the
Mhm.
media oftentimes, won't know until a little bit later. Usually by the time somebody in the media knows, then somebody else knows.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, it's interesting, and there could be because the pushback is at the 3 number, there just could be some resistance there, from the other side, but yeah, I mean, I don't know, I might actually, I haven't locked in either Oregon State or the under, but I may very well, take both of those as well with you because I do feel fairly good about, the under probably more so than Oregon State, but I don't know. I think this is just, like the perfect upset spot for Utah, or at least it seems that way on paper.
Mhm. Yeah, and I don't wanna count Utah out because they've been one of the most consistent programs over the last 10 years under Whittingham, so